Well, I think we should begin our time of prayer. Welcome everyone to HIU Community Prayer this week. We are celebrating Women History Month and as well as International Women's Day. And with us right now, we have 3 international women, and I'm very proud of them. They are great students of HIU. We have Danai, Martha, and Fatima, and I will let them talk about themselves later. So let's start our session with a prayer, with a poem actually. And Dr. Antti Winter will read it.
So let us pray as we reflect on these words for this day. Sun makes the day new. Tiny green plants emerge from earth. Birds are singing the sky into place. There is nowhere else I want to be but here. I lean into the rhythm of your heart to see where it will take us. We gallop into a warm southern wind. I link my legs to yours and we ride together toward the ancient encampment of our relatives. Where have you been, they ask, and what has taken you so long? That night, after eating, singing, and dancing, we lay together under the stars. We know ourselves to be part of the mystery. It is unspeakable. It is everlasting. It is for keeps.
Thank you. And then next, we will start with our first speaker, Danai.
Thank you. So, my first thought when I talked about with Hans was why do we celebrate Women's History Month? With a quick Google search, the first result is that we celebrate the contributions women have made to the United States and recognize the specific achievements women have made over the course of American history. I think that women have contributed a lot all over the world, in every country, every culture, every civilization. Even though women remained unrecognized and hidden behind every culture and civilization, most of them used to worship female figures and goddesses. Even the moon in many mythologies was depicted as a woman, a mother who nurtures her children on earth. Our mothers and grandmothers gave birth to us and devoted their entire lives to raise us. If this is not an unrecognized contribution in this world, then what is it? Women are powerful. They were always powerful, even when they didn't have so many rights and privileges. Back in the ancient times, Aristophanes, who was a comedy writer and poet of ancient Athens, narrates in his comedy Lysistrata in 411 BC that women in ancient Greece rebelled against their men in order to force them to negotiate peace and stop the Peloponnesian War. Can you move, Hans, to the next? Thank you. Meaning that women had the power to stop a war in this case, or in other cases like Helen of Troy, to start one. This was one of the first anti-war plays in history. In an era when supposedly women were oppressed and underestimated, they did have a lot of power. Another story from ancient Greece is the story of Medusa. I suppose most of us know Medusa as a sign of monstrous evil, but her backstory is far different. According to the main variation of her tale, Medusa was once a beautiful young woman. It was that beauty that caught the attention of sea god Poseidon, who is said to have raped her in Athena's sacred temple. You can move to the next The next one, Hans. Thank you. Athena in response turned Medusa into the figure we recognize with her snake curls and deathly stare. In the widely believed variation, the power put onto Medusa was a curse from Athena, who was furious at the tainting of her sacred temple. Other iterations of the myth, however, recognize it as a blessing, a way for Medusa to protect herself after being assaulted by Poseidon. Medusa is portrayed in most Greek art as a symbol used to protect a yard of the negative, representing a dangerous threat meant to deter other dangerous threats, an image of evil to repel evil. Medusa was never the villain, she was the victim. And we are moving on to the Me Too movement in Greece. In Greece, the Me Too movement emerged in the winter of 2020 after the publication of Sofia's Bekatorou, she is a Greek sailing champion, complained about the sexual assault she had received from a sports agent. This movement has now spread throughout Greece, and many cases of gender-based violence are constantly recorded. The next few months were a nightmare in the news. Almost every day we had powerful, strong women going out there, expose themselves to expose their rapists. The fabulous industry of performing arts, theater, sports, music was completely shaken overnight. Writing this speech today, it is impossible not to mention the femicides that happened last year in Greece. 2021 was sad in many ways, but it was more tragic in terms of effects of gender-based violence. 18 women lost their lives, women of a few decades old. Mothers, sisters, partners, wives were brutally murdered by husbands and partners, possessive and jealous and violent, perhaps sometimes beyond suspicion. And it was not only the mass violence, but also the horrific way of death of women who fell victim to people they loved and trusted. Recent studies show that for 2017, 20% of homicide victims worldwide were women. 58% of women victims of premeditated homicide were murdered by their spouse, partner, or other family member. It is estimated that 50,000 homicides occur each year on the planet, which equates to 127 women every day on average, or even one every 10 minutes. The term femicide is recognized, among other things, by the European Institute for Gender Equality as the murder of women and girls because of their gender. In Greece, however, there is no official record that includes gender dimension homicides or femicides. Now some hope for the future. A few days ago, I watched a video at primary school in an island in Greece, Syros. The students were doing a project about women who changed the world. He asked the classroom to share what they learned. A young, brave, fearless girl, Nefeli, I suppose she could barely understand what a prime minister is, answered that they talked about century, a woman who who influences their little students with important figures, and she can influence every little Nefeli to do important things in their lives and eventually change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Danai, for bringing up your perspective and experience from Greece. Next, we will have Martha.
Thank you, Hans. Hello, everyone. I'm Martha Bire, one of the one of the student of the Mirs program here. So I'm from Indonesia, and I would like to start my reflection by wishing all of you happy International Women's Day, which was commemorated yesterday, March 8th. My Instagram and Facebook wall full with many good wishes, and but also spirit that sent by many friends abroad. And this year's United Nations Women has the theme Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow, to recognize the contribution of women and girls worldwide who are leading tasks related to adaptation, mitigation, and response to climate change to build a sustainable future for all. But while preparing this reflection, I discovered that the observance of this Women's Day began with the movement of working class women who fought for more equal rights in 1908 in New York, here in the United States. And they demanded shorter hours, better pay, and the right to vote back then. And 9 years later, UNESCO finally set March 8th as International Women's Day, after the commemoration had begun to be commemorated in several countries previously. And today, based on this history, I want to share the story of a working woman from Indonesia who had to pay the struggle for the labor rights in Indonesia with her life. Her name is Marcina. You can Google it to find who is Marcina in the Google. But what I want to share here is just a little bit about her life and her story. So Marcina was an Indonesian worker who was kidnapped by the army and brutally murdered on May 8th on 1993 because of her involvement in the strike action at her workplace. She led a strike with 500 of her fellow workers, with fully know well that her life was in danger under the dictatorship of Suharto regime at the time. So Marcina has become a symbol and inspiration for the worker struggle in Indonesia until now. Marcina is a village girl. She was born on April 10, 1969, and raised by her grandmother. While being a Muhammadiyah senior high school student, she was known as an intelligent student. She was a keen student and was always top of her class. But unfortunately, her life took a different route when she had to accept that she could not afford to continue her school to a higher level, just like millions of youth in Indonesia at the time who could not finish their schooling because they did not have the money. And the poverty that her family was facing forced Marcina to leave her village. Then she moved to the city and sent her job application to several companies in Surabaya, Mojokerto, and Gresik. Those are cities in East Java province in Indonesia. And Marcina was the first generation of her family to become a factory worker at the time. Her failure to continue to university did not kill her spirit to study. Marcina still believed that knowledge could change one's life. And her high spirit to study was seen from her habit on collecting information. She liked to listen news, both on radio and TV at the time, and her passion for reading was also significant. In her spare time, she often made news clippings. It is something that became trend at the time. And she even set aside her meager wage to buy used newspaper and magazine to for this leather activity, even though her salary was barely enough to live. So in mid-April 1993, the workers at Chatur Putra Sarya Company, where Marcina's work, welcomed the news of an increase in the minimum wages according to the instruction of the governor of East Java. In that instruction, companies were required to increase their workers' wages by 20%. However, this instruction was ignored by the company because it will cut into their profit. So these circumstances trigger discontent amongst the worker, and Marcina and a dozen of other male colleagues led a strike and demonstration to the company. And on May 5th, 1993, 13 of Marcina's comrades were later arrested by the army, threatened, and forced to sign resignation letters. And Marcina, with her spirit of solidarity, went to the office of the military, went to the military office by herself on the same day to ask about the fate of her colleagues. So around 10 p.m., Marcina disappeared. Her friends didn't know where her abouts until her body was found 4 days later. And based on the result of the postmortem et repertum showed that Marcina's death was caused by torture in her genital organs and allegedly due to gunshot inserted through her genitals. Her pelvis and abdominal cavity were smashed into pieces. And nevertheless, until this day, trials and investigation follow with no one held responsible. From the regime of Suharto to the subsequent two presidents, the case of Marcina's death was again and again resurrected, but to no avail. The military is widely believed to have been involved in her disappearance and subsequent death. So, as a Christian woman, I can see the image of the crucified Jesus in Marcina's story. In commemoration of International Women's Day, but also the second week of Lent, I rediscovered the story of Jesus' torture and death through the destruction of lower-class women in Indonesia by the military and the authoritarian government during the Suharto regime. Jesus and Marcina were killed for opposing this oppressive power. Just as Jesus' body was hanged at the Calvary as the warning to the public, Marcina's mangled body was also used as media of terror to workers and society, that it was better to submit to the regime than suffer a sadistic death. So, however, the torture that Marcina experienced for me show an attempt at femicide. So at the time, Suharto mixed the military ideology and patriarchy to force Indonesian women back into their domestic space, the space accepted and regarded by the patriarchal society as the domain and nature of women. So the good woman is the good mother for her family, for her to raise the kids at the home and not go to working or even lead the strike or demonstration or protest in the public sphere. So when a critical and courageous woman like Marcina appears, she will be considered as threatening anomaly. So the wounds of Marcina's body bring terror that is unique to women. And until today, the lower class working group, especially women, are still struggling for decent working and living condition, free from violence and discrimination. Wages, high working hours, high rates of sexual harassment in the workplace, and the lack of supporting facilities for women are still becoming the common issue for women in Indonesia, in Asia, and I believe in other parts of the world. Therefore, I agree with the statement of a young women activist, Greta Thunberg. I saw her post yesterday. She states, International Women's Day is not for celebrating. It is for protesting against and raising awareness about the fact that people are still being oppressed or treated differently because of their gender. So, as Christian or other belief, we still struggle with many things, especially women, related to women and women issue. But let our faith and our memory about Jesus and his crucifying keep inspire and lead us to do something in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And our last speaker, Fatima from Pakistan.
Hi, everyone. Hans, do you mind sharing the slides?
Sure.
Okay, so I come from South Asian country, Pakistan. And to be very honest, we don't have a very good reputation in the world. We are usually considered as terrorists, conservatives, or oppressors of women. And this image of like my country breaks my heart. But I would not say that all these arguments are false or we are totally free from all these assumptions. But I would argue that, we have much more than that. Like Pakistan, like many other nations, in the world is a misogynist society. Yet also it has like very strong, dedicated women who struggle to get where they are today. And some stories are seen and heard by people, and others go totally unnoticed. So today I'll share with you a story of a person who I think is a manifestation of a lot of women in different ways. Can you move to the other slide? Yeah, thank you. So I'll be talking about Muniba Mazari. Muniba Mazari was born in Rahim Yar Khan, which is in southern Punjab province. It's a city in southern Punjab. So she was raised in a very conservative and deep-rooted cultural family, and she was married at the age of 18 before she could complete her studies to a pilot in Pakistan Air Force. But on February 2008, while traveling, you can move to the next slide, I think. Yeah, while traveling with her husband from Quetta to Rahim Yar Khan, they had a terrible car crash. And somehow her husband fell asleep and the car fell into a ditch. And somehow he managed to jump out of the car and saved himself. But she stayed in the car and sustained serious injuries and spinal cord injuries, along with multiple others, due to which her entire body was paralyzed, and and that led her paraplegic. She was completely devastated and despaired. And while lying on a hospital bed, 21-year-old Muniba started to paint, in order to distract herself. In the next slide, there are like some paintings of her. She says she added colors to her sad, dull moments. She was bedridden for 2.3 years, and with the help of multiple surgeries, she moved to a wheelchair. And in 2011, she adopted a son. And after experiencing motherhood, she started to work for children's rights and education and women empowerment. In 2014, her husband divorced her because of her disability, and her father also left the family. Then later, I think in 2018 or 17, her husband sued her for defaming him and demanded $56,000 US. But the court dismissed this case. But she believes that her pain taught her to connect with people in pain. And right now, Muniba is the first wheelchair using model in Asia, and she is now the national ambassador of the UN Women Pakistan, and she has conducted numerous TV programs and speeches for acid attack victims, gender issues, physically disabled, and sexually abused and transgender issues. What I think that I believe that there are plenty of stories like that of Muniba's, and like their struggles might be different, but the pain is the same, and we all share the same power and strength. Oprah Winfrey says that know what sparks the light in you so that you in your own way can illuminate the world. It is important, in my opinion, to find that spark in ourselves. Our light might be different from each other, but it serves the same mission, that is to find our paths. Muniba was physically paralyzed, but oftentimes I feel that we are emotionally we suffer from emotional or mental paralysis. She found her way with time, and we too will find ours once we are able to clear that cobwebs in our minds. And it's okay to stay in that position and to process and to move forward whenever we feel ready to. And yeah, I'm just sending love and support and strength to each and every one of you. I truly believe that you all are strong, like all women are strong and worthy of love, care, and compassion, and are able to achieve everything this world contains. And and I think I can end the coming to prayer with the prayer if Hans allows me to. Yeah. O holy memory, carry us down the ages. On threads of remembrance, connect us with our sisters and mothers of all times. Bring us their childhood innocence and their adolescent hope again. Recreate their longings of our mothers and grandmothers before their succumbing to the weight of patriarchy. Touch us with the unfulfilled capacities of our foremothers, whose lost energies we now resurrect. Gather the light threads of anguish and hope that binds us together and weave for us a new memory. In this time and place, blessed be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danai, Martha, and Fatima. And definitely this is an invitation for all of us to keep doing the protesting and keep celebrating the life of women in our lives and in the world. And if you have time to stay for Interfaith Cafe, please do so. And I wish you all have a great week ahead and stay warm. And also, actually, there is another prayer tomorrow, prayer for peace at 9 a.m. And I'll send the link tomorrow as well for a reminder. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week ahead.